Trust me, I loved it.
Hello and welcome to this recording today. I have invited Steve Simpson from London. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you for having me on your wonderful show.
Thank you for being here. And Steve, you connected me, and I was really happy for that. You saw what I have been sharing in social media.
That's
so
great.
So you saw something, and I'm so happy for that, because I know that you have going deep with the understanding of how our mind works, and you are a doctor.
Yes.
And you are a TED talker.
TEDx talker, yes.
Yeah, and a mind coach. You're a lot. You write books.
Yeah.
You have a YouTube channel.
Yeah. And two podcast channels.
And two podcast channels, yeah. And you're a hypnosis therapist, and yeah. So you have going very deep with how the mind works.
Well,
so yeah. So today, you set up the topic, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it was how to connect with unconscious mind.
Yeah, that was my suggestion. But as we continue to talk, I'm sure our conversation will go in many different directions. But one thing that will not change is the importance to all of us of our unconscious mind. And you say that I've gone very deep into the mind. Well, I've gone as deep as I can, but the deeper I get, the more I realize we just know almost nothing about how our mind works. And maybe that's a good thing, but on the other hand, if all of us could learn just a little bit more about the unconscious mind, about our mind, then life would be a lot easier for us. We'd be a lot more successful and a lot happier. And really, that's what I'm going to try and talk about today, or share with you and your viewers.
Yeah, and what comes to me is that I used to say that behind all this learning and teaching and studying, we have something in us that knows when it knows. And that is something that all people can touch, even if you don't have any education. And that was something that really resonate with me when I was in that bad mood, because I could relax with, I don't know, I don't have this education, but it doesn't matter, because I have also got this wisdom inside of me. And I can also know when I know how to, if I have a question about life, I can look inside and touch that part of me that knows. And you don't need any education for doing that. You just need to listen.
You have expressed this really well, and what you have just said could be the most important part of our conversation today. I 100% agree with what you're saying, and it goes contrary to what the majority of the world thinks is important. The majority of the world thinks you have to have an education, and once you've got your results at school, you have to go to university, otherwise you won't get a good job. And after university, there will be people who say, it's time for you to do a master's degree now. And you do a master's degree. And this can carry on forever, getting more and more certificates and more qualifications. And trust me, I'm a doctor. I've got more letters after my name. I've spent thousands and thousands of hours, and I have to say that most of those hours were wasted time. It's only in the last few years that I've realized this, and it is exactly the way you describe it. Inside all of us, there are 8 billion people on this planet. All of us, assuming that we're not suffering from some illness or we've had some accident, all of us have a brain that is pretty much identical. What's different is the way we use it. And so that's why, you know, somebody said to me, oh, you must be so intelligent, Dr. Simpson. And okay, that was a compliment. So I said, well, thank you for that. But it's not true. In fact, I'll tell you what, I don't even know what intelligence is anymore. The people that I've worked with, they come from all spectrums of life. And some of the people who have the no qualifications come out with things that comments that I'm in awe of, their depth of understanding of life. And so inside every one of us, we all have this ability, this potential to be the source of wisdom. Now, this is where it gets complicated, because people use all kinds of different ways of describing this, because it's a very, very difficult thing to describe. But Carl Jung, the psychologist, he published a paper that's regarded as one of the most significant papers in psychology for 100 years or maybe ever. And it was called about the collective unconscious. He says that all human beings we are related in some way. Our minds are all related in some way. And when this was published, and he published it actually, he first presented this paper to a group of doctors at Bart's Hospital in London. It's one of the oldest hospitals in London, and not very, very far from where I used to live. In fact, I've walked past it many times. And he expected a lot of criticism for this very controversial viewpoint, and he wasn't disappointed. He did get a lot of criticism, but he also got a lot of respect and recognition from people who, whilst they couldn't understand what he was saying, they felt intuitively that this man, Dr. Carl Jung, was onto something important. Now, when we look back, our knowledge of genetics and DNA and inheritance are expanding exponentially every day. And now we can do gene studies, and we can identify the genomes in different people, different cultures, from different ethnic backgrounds. And we find that the genes are pretty much the same. And when we study something like a worm, a simple animal, they have more DNA than we do. They have more genes than we do. So what does that tell us? I don't know. It just makes it more and more confusing. But anyway, that's what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. Now, some people, when they have a spiritual experience or a religious experience, their head goes into a certain place, and maybe their heart as well, and they feel this inner wisdom, and they feel I'm connecting closely to God, or I'm connecting to the universe, or I'm connecting to my higher self. These are some of the ways that people describe it. And it doesn't matter, as you say, it doesn't matter what you call it. You know it when you know it. It's the difference between thinking of something rationally and logically and knowing with conviction. And I'm touching my heart, because that's what a lot of people say. But also some people say, it comes from my stomach. Like I had a gut instinct that this was the right thing to do. Now, I'm sure that of the people who are watching and listening to this, I just hope I haven't confused them even more. Cecilia, what do you think?
No, and I describe it like I don't have any words sometimes for what I'm feeling. It's just that when I started to listen to something inside of me, heart, wisdom, I just got a feeling, a deeper feeling than just the thought. And even if the ego didn't agree with it, or does agree with it, I listen more and more to how it feels, because I have seen that the deeper feeling that comes is my intuition, my stomach, my heart telling me something that I need to hear, or what road I have to walk, even if my ego doesn't like it. Maybe I can't see why. I just know that here's something. I talk to this person, or I walk this road, or it's a feeling I feel that lies deeper than my busy thoughts. So I trust that more and more. And I have to also trust that I don't know why. And maybe I know it later on why I did to do this in this way. And that's, you need to be curious, and you need to allow yourself to go into the unknown, where you don't know. And it can be scary to be in that space where you don't know directly why do I do this, or why it's like that, why am I meeting this person now. But the trusting that it will, the knowing will come, the deeper knowing will come if you move in that direction and follow your feeling. It's what I have seen. And I, like you said, Steve, we see what we see. And I can only share what I see now. Maybe if I look back, or I look back for 1 year ago, or maybe a week ago, or a day ago, I don't share the same I share today, because it's always moving. And follow my moves, my low moods and high moods. It's also up and down with how I feel just right now. So how do you see that, Steve, when about our consciousness, when we have low mood, and the difference between just be here and now?
Well, it's very important what you said, and it's even more important the way you described it so well. It is normal. All of us will have variations in the way we think on a day-by-day basis, and even second by second. And it's why people can be so annoying and so frustrating. Sometimes it feels like we are the only normal people in the whole world. But of course, you see, that's what they're all thinking. All of them is thinking, why can't this person understand what I'm saying? Surely they must know that this isn't the right thing or this is the right thing. It's because we all have opinions, and our opinions change. I mean, I could have said something to you yesterday totally different to the way I'm speaking now. And I would have thought, yeah, I'm in the moment. This is what I think is correct. This is what I think. This is what I believe in. I trust this. And today I could say something different. I think people get into trouble when they start to worry about the way their feelings and their mood and their emotions change. And they think, there's something in my mind that's out of control. And I'm so used to controlling everything now. Now we all have our mobile phones, and there's more technology on a phone than there was in Apollo 12 or 11, whichever it was that flew to the moon. We're all carrying around that in our hand. In fact, it's a tiny little chip. Somewhere inside the phone will be the thing that makes all this happen. So we know everything now in our life. We can measure, we can put rings on our finger or little necklaces or something, and they will measure our heart rate the whole time. They will measure all of the bits underneath the heart rate, things like heart rate variability, which we won't talk about, but people are tracking all of these things now, and they will get a little alert when something is wrong. If their heart rate goes up a little bit like this, there'll be an alert, and then that makes them more tense, stressed. What's going on? I feel relaxed. Why has my heart rate gone up? We look at the app and say, the train, it's going to be 90 seconds late. It's always late, this train. Well, in my time, we didn't know when the train was going to come at all. We didn't know the time. We didn't know whether it'd be early or late.
Are you that old, Steve?
Well, I know that I look so young, but I am a little older than I look. And when I was a student, I had to travel on buses, and you'd be waiting at the bus stop, hoping it would be cold, it'd be raining, and you'd be waiting there for half an hour. You'd be looking at your watch. We did have watches in those days, or we'd look at the sun to try and guess the time. And then we were just about to walk and go home, and then 3 buses would come together. But we didn't stress about it. So I think the majority of us, and I'm sure that I'm the same, we've become brainwashed into thinking that everything in life can be controlled. And the harder we work at it, the more we study, the more we talk about it, we will find the answer. Well, of course, the more they do all of these things, they move further and further away from finding an answer to anything. There's an expression, I think it might be a Buddhist expression, but people use it commonly. They say less is more. And I think this applies to our brain and the way we use it. Less is more. The less we think, the less we stress, the less we set ourselves goals of achievement that we have to meet, the more healthy, calm, and successful we will be. So I'm guessing now that some of the people who are listening to this, they're thinking, well, all right, they're all saying we've got this, Cecilia and Steve are saying we've got this inner wisdom we can tap into, that there's a better way of using our mind. How can I do that? That's what some people will be thinking. What's in this for me? What can I do that will make my life less stressful, more successful, more fulfilling? I'll have better relationships. I will be healthier. I will look younger. How can I do this? And I think you've given the answer in one way, and I'll give it another way. The answer is that the more closely we can connect to our unconscious mind, that is where this wisdom, this intuition, this inner knowledge, these instincts. This is where they live. And the anatomy of the brain, I'll make it as simple as I could be. You can call it 2 bits. Let's say the bit at the top, that's called the conscious mind. That's where you and I are thinking right now. This is where all of us spend most of our life. Underneath that is the unconscious mind. Now, which is bigger? I'll tell you. The conscious mind is about 1% of what the unconscious mind is. So we're spending all of our time in our conscious mind, which is 1% of our brain, and we're thinking that we can control everything. No, the control, if there is such a thing, and there is control in biology, the control comes from the unconscious mind, because this is the part of the brain that is doing everything. It's controlling our blood pressure, our pulse, our glucose metabolism, our balance, everything. And it's just as well that it is unconscious, because if we could have control over it, guess what? There'd be another ring we'd put on our finger so that we can control all those things ourselves. We can dial it up, we can dial it down, because this is what people do. No, we don't want to touch it, but we definitely want to establish a better communication between the conscious mind and the unconscious. We need to find some balance between the two. And one thing's for certain, that this connection will never take place when our conscious mind is busy thinking and stressing and planning and controlling and criticizing. Now, so let me ask you, you found this space where you can get this feeling, get this knowing, get this deeper understanding. How do you find it?
It came suddenly. I wasn't looking at it. I wanted it. My ego wanted it, but I didn't get it when I wanted it. So I gave it up. And that's what was nothing that I planned. It was just something happened to me inside of me that said, enough is enough. I don't want this anymore. I can't live my life like this anymore. And so I just had enough. And then it suddenly happened. Something just opened up inside of me, and I came to a feeling, a deeper feeling that I hadn't touched before. And I just saw that, wow, I'm not my thinking. Here's something that I touched that I had never felt like that before. And then I knew what I knew, that I wasn't broken, but I still got all these messy thoughts about things. I still felt very insecure and frightened about what I have been. What's that? That's a new field that I don't know. So I felt a little bit insecure, and I didn't know who to speak with. So I started to search on YouTube and found 2 guys that shared about understanding how mind works and how we function, 3 principles. And then I started to get it together. But I needed to calm down and follow those people sharing about this. Listen and listen and listen, even if it was very messy up here and I didn't understand and I didn't agree with them at all. Sometimes I just felt, oh, you see it this way, but I don't. It can't be. You don't understand how I feel. You haven't gone through what I gone through. So it was very messy thoughts going on up in my head. But I wanted to have a deeper change with my my well-being. So I had no choice, because I had tried everything around therapies and methods and all that. So I said to myself, you gotta listen. You gotta listen, and you gotta be curious to what they are saying. So I followed the feeling of that. And I think I was sitting in webinars every day, a couple of hours, every day. And I was hearing the same thing over and over again. They were talking about thoughts and feeling and consciousness. But I just heard little in the beginning. And then I heard little more. And then I needed to rest from it for a while. And then I came back, listen more again. So I can see that there is something with listen to someone that you feel are seeing something that you don't yet.
Yeah. Well, I work as, I don't work in conventional medicine anymore. I work as a hypnotherapist and as a psychotherapist. So pretty much all of my work is to do with the mind. And that doesn't mean to say I work with people who are sick in any way. A lot of the people I work with are people that are very happy with their lives, but they know, they feel that there's something better. There's another level they can go to. And I think most of us, if we have a feeling like that, we say, well, I need to explore this. Now, it can be frightening, for sure. And of course, one way that people explore it is they take what are called recreational drugs. And yes, people describe these, particularly the psychedelic ones, they describe these very spiritual sort of hallucinations, and they talk about the things that you and I have been talking about. But of course, I don't recommend that to anybody. I mean, I know plenty of people have tried to persuade me to, and I say, no, I don't want to. Because any drug that we want, or any feeling or emotion that we want, it's already inside. We don't need to take anything else. And now, if I can just go back a little bit, connect more closely to the unconscious mind, and I was going to say everything will be clear. No, everything won't, but you're definitely going to have more of an understanding. Now, in a nutshell, let's go back. How can we do this? Well, you gave 3 magic words, and in my work with people, when I hear these 3 words, I know that we're about to make a big jump. It's when people, I can see the color of their face change. They're telling me about all their frustrations, all the problems they're going through, and then there's a slight pause, and their face hardens, and they say, "Enough is enough." And those are the words, because they've reached this point already. I didn't have to take them there. Maybe I had to encourage them and relax them, maybe through hypnosis or whatever, but they say enough is enough, and they mean it. And any kind of change can be possible then. So what can, they've had to learn that the hard way over many years. What can all of us do that's going to be a little quicker than that? Well, if we go back through the thousands of years, there are some things that have always been there. People talk about the power of prayer, the power of meditation, the power of breathing, mindfulness, anything like that that will just switch off this ego here and allow us to forget about things for a little while. Now, you don't need to go into some deep trance. You can maybe just go for a walk and for once do something revolutionary. Leave your phone at home, go for a walk on your own, and don't even have a clock. I never wear a watch anymore on my hand. Don't even, care about the time. Don't even care where you're going. Just walk. But study nature, open your senses, everything. We have 5 senses: what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we smell, what we taste. Open up those senses and study the beauty of nature. And you can't not feel, first of all, how wonderful and magical the universe is, and yet how tiny and small and insignificant we are. And you mentioned 3 principles, which helped you, and it's helped a lot of people. And the problem is, I've spent a lot of time studying 3 principles as well. And the problem with 3 principles when you're working with other people is to describe it. And there's a person that I've done a lot of my studying with, Michael Neal. He's one of the recognized world experts. Even he says, when I start to talk about 3 principles, I sound like an idiot. I see people, saying, what's this guy taking? But for those of you who are curious, the 3 principles are curiously simplistic, simple. The first principle is thought. We all have thought. The second principle is consciousness. This is how our brain encodes our thoughts to bring them higher up. Our thoughts start deep down in our unconscious mind, and then our ego, kind of up in our conscious mind, senses something going on, and it starts to put words to these thoughts, and it starts to put pictures to these thoughts, because the conscious mind, it can't deal with abstract stuff, which can cause a problem for people who feel they need to be able to put into words everything. Anyway, that's consciousness. That's the second level. And then the third level is what we call mind. And really, that's what we've been talking today, the power of what some people call big mind, or infinite intelligence, or the collective consciousness of Carl Jung. And it is very, very true. If you decide you're going to learn more about this and study, there's nobody who can give you a little checklist of 10 things, this is what you have to do. It doesn't work like that. And you described, Cecilia, every day, sitting in for a 2-hour webinar. I've done all that. And 2 hours feels like about 10 hours, because people are talking in these vague, abstract ways and nothing's making any sense. But it's not a waste of time, because you are recognizing things unconsciously, assuming that you're still awake, or actually probably better if you sleep. You put the webinar on, go to sleep, and you'll be absorbing it subliminally. Anyway, you'll be absorbing something. In science, we call this osmosis. We're sucking something in. And that's how it came to me. And I was on one of Michael Neal's distance learning courses, and it was also around the time I made my first visit to Australia. And I was staying in a nice hotel in, for those of you who know Sydney, it's a park called Bondi Junction. It's quite high. It's one of the high. Sydney, by the way, is not flat. If you walk around Sydney, there's lots of hills, which I found to my surprise, because I walked everywhere around Sydney. And Bondi Junction is on one of the top of these hills, And I was in a high-rise hotel, and I was situated pretty much near the top. And I was thinking about these three principles and not understanding it all. And we had one of these elevators that's on the outside of the building. It's made of glass. Some of these hotels have them. And I would always choose to go in this. Some people would never go in that elevator because they're frightened of the heights. It makes them dizzy. I always went in because I'm frightened of heights as well, but it was worth it for what I could see. The higher we went, the more I saw. And I thought, this is like life. Let's imagine that we're in the elevator and we're stuck on ground floor and we're pushing all the buttons and none of the buttons are working. Well, you see, that's how most people live. They're living on the ground floor. And the ground floor isn't very nice. There's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of pollution, there's a lot of people arguing, and the surroundings, the drab buildings, and there's rubbish piled everywhere. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, there's always rubbish. That is life for most people. But if we step into this elevator and we press number one, we go up one flight and we look around, things actually are a bit better. Yeah, we can look down, we can still see everybody down there, and we can still hear the cars on their horns, but it's not as loud. And you think, oh well, you know, I'm not always now getting irritated by everything that's going on. I'm a bit separate, distance. Nice feeling. Well, I could go on and on with the story, but I'll make it quick. You go to the top floor, and you're expecting the doors to open. They don't open, so you're stuck there at the top floor. You start to get a bit scared. You press the alarm button. Nothing's working. After 2 or 3 minutes, you practice your yoga breathing or whatever it is, or you balance your chakras, and you start to feel a little bit calmer. You think, okay, maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe there's something that I can learn from this experience, that I'm stuck and frightened. So you look around. And if you're brave, you look down. And the world looks totally different. You start to see a structure to the world, to a city like Sydney. You see how all the roads are connected. You can see to in one direction, you can see the airport, and you can see the planes all circling around, all spaced apart, and all coming to land one after the other. They're not bumping into each other. They've all got their own bit of space. Somebody's organizing something there just as well. The railway lines, and then we can see the sea, and beyond that we can see the mountains. And if we thought the world was wonderful before, now we've gone up here, it must be 100 times more wonderful. So by just going on an elevator trip and getting stuck, whether we like it or not, we've elevated our consciousness. And once that happens, it can't be changed. Sure enough, we're going to have to come back to ground zero at some point, but we'll come back a different person. Just like when people are lucky enough to go to the International Space Station and spend a month or now 6 months or longer maybe, when they come back, they're different people. And they talk about it. They have this same vague expression that Michael Neal describes. They can't explain what was different, but it's inside. It's beyond words. And not many of us will go to the space station, but we don't need to. Just like we don't need to do a lot of other stuff, because we can do it all in our mind, just by opening our mind up to what is already there. Time for me to take a deep breath.
Wow, Steve, this was so wonderful. This is the three principles, and you describe it. It's just I feel this is the journey that I see I have been walking and open up for. The level of the elevator. And it can be scary up there sometimes when you're doing things like this, telling your story with different people, connecting with different people. But when we meet and sit like this, get present with each other, I feel that we are not so different. Even if you are a doctor and a TED talker and all of that, and I come from different experiences, I don't see that I'm not enough when we are sitting here together and talk. I can still feel that when I go out on Facebook and I compare myself to others, I get a low mood. But when I get present in these kinds of when we sit together like this, and I don't have that kind of thinking, I just feel like we are the same.
Yeah. We're all the same.
And I feel this is safe. I don't feel that I need to compare myself to you. Well, I can honor you for doing that TED talk, because I can have a thinking that I'm not there yet, but maybe I will. We never know. Well,
you know, as you say, I'm a doctor. I've got qualifications and stuff. I've already said most of those were a waste of time. I don't feel better than anybody else. In fact, when I look around, because ego being what it is, I feel less than everybody else. But then I just tell ego to shut up, go and talk to somebody else. And in my TED talk, which, by the way, a lot of people like, but I've also had plenty of comments from people who didn't like it, who think I'm an idiot. Well, they're entitled to their opinion. They're probably right. I probably am an idiot. But at least there's something behind what I'm saying. And from what I remember in the TED talk, I was talking about language and, this gift of language that we have, of being able to talk to each other as we are now. But the trouble is that this gift, like most gifts, is a two-edged sword. Whilst it has some advantages, it also has plenty of disadvantages. And the way this ties into three principles, and I didn't mention three principles at all in my talk. I mean, I've never even watched the video. I've watched it once, but I haven't seen it anyway. I don't think I did. But it was a fairly late evolution for us, Homo sapiens. About 30,000, maybe 40,000 years ago, we started to become more spiritual. In these old cave paintings, you could see we were trying to express our thoughts by way of pictures, crude pictures. And we were also learning before. We had grunted a bit like a gorilla and a chimpanzee, but we had this evolution, I guess it must have been over some time, that we had this incredibly complicated voice box and the muscles in our tongue and our mouth. It's a very difficult thing to talk. We'd learned how to do that. And once we learned how to talk, we would have these feelings like, you've got some food, I want it. Before, we would just get a stick and drive the other person away and take their food. And then once we started talking, we realized we don't have to hit people all the time. We can put on our best voice and say, please, will you share your food with me? Or, look, if you give me some of your food, maybe there's something I can do for you. So we're starting to bargain. And the trouble is, you see, that what we've fallen into the mistake. We're getting these thoughts that are coming from our brain and we're putting words to them. Now, in English, if I say, this is nice, you can interpret that in at least 10 different ways. This is nice. 3 words. In fact, everybody on the planet, in their language, I say, this is nice, this is nice, this is nice. They all mean different things. So this is why people find it difficult to learn languages, and particularly to learn English, because English is full of ambiguity. And it's ambiguity that makes people argue, because we put things into words and the other person doesn't really understand what we're trying to say. Now, before we could talk, we were experts at body language, at pattern recognition, and we could look at somebody, and I don't know whether we could see their aura, but we knew what mood they were in, and we could calibrate according to that. This was a time when we knew a lot of things without knowing how or why, which is another way of saying before we could learn to talk, we were more closely connected to intuition, which is maybe the best gift that we have. So once we start learning to talk, we forget, most of us, where our intuition is. It's just like, I talked about the mobile phones, and one of the things they do now is when you're in your car, you stick it on and it'll tell you where you want to go. Nobody buys maps anymore. They just use their phone. Well, guess what? Even though I'm such a young person, I can remember when we didn't have phones. And when we'd go on a long journey, 2 or 3 hours, we would study and we would write down all of the road numbers and things we had to go on, and roughly the timings. And then we would stress because we'd miss a turn and didn't know how to get back onto the route. We don't even think about things like that anymore. So basically, we've got this fantastic thing inside our head and we're not using it properly. None of us are using it properly.
And I can also see that now when I more and more follow my intuition, I don't need all that stories explaining why I'm not feeling for this or that, or why I didn't do like that, or it doesn't matter. I don't need to explain all the stuff I don't do or I do, because I just know that this is not for me, or maybe I go here. I don't know why. I just follow my intuition. And that settle the chatting.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned before, I work with all kinds of different people. And a group of people that I work with who seem to appreciate my work the most are professional poker players, because they're all what you would call intelligent. They're very good at processing information, because poker is a very complicated game. But they recognize that, they can't see the cards the other people have on the table. So they have to make some kind of guess. And the very best players, they know that this is where they use intuition. And this is what they come to me for, because they know that a lot of my work is about increasing our intuition, or getting closer to the source of intuition. And when things go wrong for them at the table, they will call me. They sometimes call me when things go really well, but when things go bad, they always call me. And they want to talk about it. And I listen. I listen for however long it takes until they've got it all out. Then they start breathing, and I start breathing again as well. And I'll always say the same thing. What was your first thought? And they'd say, my first thought was that this person didn't have good cards, that he was bluffing. So the hand develops, more and more cards there, more and more money in the middle of the table. And I say, what was your last thought? My last thought, I changed my mind. I thought, this person had a very good hand. And so I threw my hands away. I lost that money. And I said, and did the guy show you what he had? He said, yeah, he did. And he had nothing. So I said, never, ever forget your first thought is most likely your best thought. And I mentioned something like that in my TED talk. And a lot of the people in the audience then were from the educational community. And one of the teachers came to me at the coffee break and he said, you know, what you said about intuition was really, it really resonated with me. He said, because I see this. He said, when the kids have examinations, I'm the invigilator, which means he's the teacher that has to walk around to make sure that they're not cheating. They're not using their iPhones or whatever. And exams now are mainly you tick the box, you know, yes or no, or maybe there's 5 selections and you have to choose one. He said, I walk around and I see their pencil and it'll always hover over what the right answer is. And they'll think about it. And then 3 seconds later, they'll quickly choose another box. He said, I see that all the time. So these kids, they've been in the classes mostly, they've listened to all these boring teachers, and they've learned something, or they remember something, but it's deep down. And it's there, but doesn't come out. And
you got a thought that you wanted to connect with me, and I'm so happy for that, Steve. It has been a wonderful session together here, and I hope the listener likes it. But I know that I needed to stop you in time, so I have to do that now, and we can see each other again, make another session. So thank you very, very much, Steve.
Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you for all the people who have stayed with us this long. You deserve a medal, but feel free to keep in touch with both of us with your questions and comments. And thank you for joining us, all of you, and particularly thank you for inviting me.
And I'm going to put where to find us on the YouTube channel in the bio. Good. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.